Right, people, hello, how you doing? So, fairly recently, we've had the introduction of the hardcore mode to Rust, and a lot of us have been looking forward to it. We've been well aware of it for quite some time, and the devs themselves have said, right, so this is the first edition. We likely will be patching this as we go along. You know, we're going to probably make some additions. We're probably going to add things, take away things. Let's just see how it plays out. We're going to listen to feedback, and we'll see what happens. So everybody's fine with that. People have been playing it. People have been enjoying themselves. I'm sure people have opinions and whatnot. But quite a lot of us had to figure out things. And Mr. MICRØ here, the genius that he is, he's found something out and he wants to share it all with you. So we've called this the improvised compass method. And, well, technique. We'll call it whatever you want. What do you say, Mr. MICRØ? What should we call it?
I like either of those.
Yeah.
Descriptive and accurate.
Personally, I'd like to call it Sally. I think that's a wonderful name. But anyway, let's just go straight into it. So, if you are aware, in normal Rust, if you look above, we do have the helpful compass overlay. That way is south, that way is west, that way is north, and that way over there is east. And if you're very, very smart, you'd probably track where the sun moves during the night to the dawn, to the day, to the dusk. You'd probably be able to figure it out. So there is something though in hardcore mode, as we pointed out, you don't have the compass, and that's a bit daunting, isn't it? Trying to figure your way around without a map, without a compass, that could be very, very hard, very annoying to deal with. But Mr. MICRØ here, he has a special technique to share with us. So Mr. MICRØ, take lead and speak away.
Right. Well, as you pointed out, with no compass, there's really not much you have in way of navigating yourself around. I mean, even giving each other directions in a PvP scenario, you really have trouble calling out a heading, which is a common technique. They'll say, "Oh, there's a guy over there, 290," right? So you can communicate a lot of information with that compass heading, and without that, we're very left to our own devices, shall we say, to figure out where things are. And this maybe isn't useful in a PvP scenario or the heat of the moment. However, for general navigation, I think this is potentially a very useful tool. So let's say you're out in the world and you want to know which way is which. Well, as you pointed out, you can kind of look at the sun and take a guess at what time it is, or roughly the direction that we're facing. And in this case, we know the sun rises in the east, and east is this direction. So if you were to move the time to the early morning, about 8 o'clock, you would see the sun coming up over the hill over there. And then you already showed it with your later time that you have as a keybind, but the sun sets over this way, which is roughly to the west. So right now you could approximately gather that due to the position of the sun at midday, which is splitting the difference between east and west, this would be a northern direction. And that's, if you know how the sun works and if you can figure out what time it is and all that. So let's say you weren't that good at figuring out the time or the direction from the sun. We have another technique that I figured out, and it has to do with perhaps the game engine or the mechanics of the way the game has been programmed. But if you take your spear and you throw it on the ground,
Okay.
look what direction it points. It points to the north.
Always to the north?
Always to the north. So regardless of which way you're facing when you throw your spear on the ground, it always points to the north.
To the north. Literally,
so
straightforward arrow point, always to the north. Wow.
Now, if you're on uneven terrain or, you're at a confined space, it's not going to point north forever.
Yeah.
So you have to be mindful of what you're doing, when you're doing it. But on terrain like this down here, you throw your spear, it pretty much points to the north.
Yeah.
So as long as you do it in a way that it doesn't get interfered with by other obstacles. You know, it doesn't have a collision with something. If you're just out in open space, maybe in the road, maybe in level ground, but you're gonna have this thing pointing north.
So,
And it works for other items too, not just the spear. It basically works for any item that you in advance know the orientation for.
that's exactly what I was about to ask. So, do you have any other items, weapons, tools, deployables that could help us see potentially other points on the compass? So we know north, but what else do we have,
Pick up
Mr.
a couple
MICRØ?
of these spears. I'll leave this one here just for an example.
We've got north.
So let's say you're out running around with your bolty
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to figure out where you're at. You know, a spear works when you're in prim phase, but if you're tier 3 and you're running around, probably don't have a spear on you. So you throw your bolty. Where does that point?
Oh.
It points to the east.
So it always points to the east. So let's just bring that up. So that's literally smack dab straight looking at E, and then the opposite side straight looking at W. So from here, that's going north, that's going east, that's going west. And again, you could always use this to figure out where south is. So that's going smack dab to south. Right, clever. And this is all because of the game engine then. Like, it's how they've set it all up.
Yeah. And if you really wanted to find north, you could look at the bolty on the ground and sort of line up the words on your screen that say bolt action rifle. Now, if that's aligned with the top of the gun, you're essentially pointed north. So,
interesting.
Well, you have to do it from in your view. So from first person view, get up close to it with your HUD turned on.
Oh, with my HUD turned on.
The,
oh, yeah. Oh, that's what you meant.
Pop up on the screen.
So if you position it right in the middle, then you'd know exactly where north is, and then yeah. All right. So yeah. That makes sense, and then the complete opposite. Right there. So with just the bolt action rifle, you can easily then figure out that's an AK. What's the AK doing? The AK is pointing to the west. The handle is pointing to the east. And I guess you could sit here and say the little notch before the magazine is always pointing north, and therefore the opposite of that little notch right there, well, that's always pointing south. Ah, clever. And everybody has an AK, don't they? I mean, who doesn't have an AK?
Within the first hour of every wipe, I have an AK. No, I'm just kidding.
And you got pickles. They pickles?
Well, no, this is
fuel.
This is
those aren't pickles. Don't drink that.
If you fly out with your camera and get a close up on the actual text on the jar there. So this is low grade fuel for anybody wondering. So this is 1 unit of low grade fuel I threw on the ground. If you look at that, the text on there says Jilko's genuine horse fuel, and the O in Jilko's always points towards 225, which is southwest, which has absolutely no significance to me. But if all you had was a jar of low grade and you throw it so it lands upright, which you can do by picking it up and throwing it directly upwards. I have a keybind for the throw command, but if you throw it straight up, it'll deploy on the ground, standing straight up, and the O, is going to be pointing towards 225. Sorry, we're fighting for the same space.
Yeah, I initially thought I had to look that way, but I got it wrong. I had to look that way. All right, so
you probably wouldn't be using the jar of low grade as a direction finder, but it's my demonstration as evidence of the fact that pretty much everything that has a world model can be thrown on the ground, and if you know which direction it points, which is typically one of the cardinal directions, like in the spear it points north, these two tier 3 weapons point east and west respectively. Not that it matters if you just know these point east and west, like I think you could figure out which one is east and which one is west. In all
fairness,
you didn't have to necessarily remember.
It might be a bit of a bit hard, but would you say the very middle of the stone spear with the little handle bit? If you look one way, you can figure out east and west.
Well, it doesn't have to be the middle. You could be anywhere along it, but you just align the text that pops up on your screen, stone spear, which is horizontal.
Text.
Right?
Yes.
That orients you to be perpendicular to the spear, and therefore
if you went that way,
you're essentially directly pointed east.
If you could be very straight up with it, the text, the arrow down, lines up to E, and then the opposite would be W. Yeah. Right. Okay.
And
that is helpful.
And if you crouch and back away, you can really cut down on the angle that you have to pivot to change. So you can basically sight down it, and get a pretty level perspective on it, if that makes sense.
So does this only apply to the regular spear as the stone spear? What about regular spear? Is regular spear different?
No,
Wooden spear.
Essentially every item in the game here. I'll just spawn in some random things here.
I'll pick everything up. So
sure. So here's a wooden spear.
Again pointing north.
There's a pitchfork.
Again pointing north.
There's a paddle.
Well, the shovel bit points north. The opposite points south.
There's a bow.
Maybe throw the bow again. That landed on. Yeah, I'll pick this up.
It was interference on the play there, but
so bow always points east and west, and the main curve bit points north, and therefore the opposite would point south. Right. Okay, that is handy. It's something like just one sort of basic thing, but navigation around a map when you don't have a map and you don't have any sense of what's the orientation, something like this would help out a lot of people. So the improvised compass technique figured out by Mr. MICRØ, and now he's just thrown down all of these. Yes, yep. So I guess we've got something started here. I guess everybody's going to go through every single weapon, item, deployable now to try and find out which points where and whatnot. What's the most cheap and effective thing to be the most efficient compass. Cool. So thank you very much, Mr. MICRØ. I'm sure everybody's very happy to have seen that. And I think hardcore mode just got a little bit easier. Let's see if they end up... You know what? I'm pretty sure all the Face Punch programmers are very annoyed with you for pointing that out, because they're probably going to have to fix it. Ah! Why? That's not pointing north, is it? Anyway, thank you for watching.
Everywhere you go, you're pointing north.
Whee!